The Vietnam War was not just a military conflict. It was a psychological collapse, a political deception, a moral wound that never fully healed. For the first time in its modern history, the United States did not win a war. No victory parade, no clear enemy surrender, no moment of triumph. Instead, there were body bags, burning villages, televised deaths, protests in the streets, and soldiers who came home broken, only to be ignored. Vietnam shattered America's belief in itself. This is the story of how and why. Chapter 1. Why Vietnam even mattered to America. After World War II, the world was divided into two camps: capitalism, led by the United States; communism, led by the Soviet Union and China. America feared one thing above all else: the spread of communism. This fear gave birth to the domino theory, the belief that if one country fell to communism, neighboring countries would fall next. Vietnam, a small Southeast Asian nation, suddenly became a global chess piece. But here's the truth. Vietnam was not America's war. It was originally France's colonial war. Chapter 2. From French colony to American nightmare. For nearly a century, France controlled Vietnam as a colony. Vietnamese people were exploited, taxed heavily, and treated as second-class citizens. During World War II, Japan occupied Vietnam. When Japan lost, Vietnamese nationalist leader Ho Chi Minh declared independence in 1945. Ho Chi Minh quoted America's Declaration of Independence in his speech. He hoped the U.S. would support Vietnam's freedom. Instead, America supported France. Why? Because Ho Chi Minh was a communist. This single decision planted the seeds of disaster. Chapter 3. America enters Vietnam slowly and quietly. In 1954, France was defeated at Dien Bien Phu. Vietnam was divided: North Vietnam, communist; South Vietnam, U.S.-backed. America promised to protect South Vietnam. At first, the U.S. only sent military advisors, weapons, money. Presidents Eisenhower and Kennedy believed they could control the situation without full war. They were wrong. Chapter 4. A weak ally and a strong lie. South Vietnam's government was corrupt, unpopular, and unstable. Many South Vietnamese people supported the communists or didn't care who ruled. Meanwhile, the Viet Cong, guerrilla fighters loyal to the North, blended into villages, jungles, and cities. You couldn't tell who was a farmer, who was a fighter. America entered a war where the enemy was invisible. Chapter 5. The Gulf of Tonkin, the lie that started it all. In August 1964, President Johnson told America that North Vietnamese forces attacked U.S. ships in the Gulf of Tonkin. Congress approved war powers immediately. Later, it was revealed one attack never happened, the other was exaggerated. This lie gave Johnson the authority to send hundreds of thousands of troops. America was now fully at war. Chapter 6. Jungle Warfare, a war America didn't understand. Vietnam was not Europe, not Korea, not a battlefield America knew. The jungle was the enemy. Extreme heat, torrential rain, insects, disease. Soldiers couldn't see the enemy. They stepped on booby traps. They walked into ambushes. The Viet Cong used tunnels, hit-and-run attacks, traps made of bamboo and rusted metal. America had technology. Vietnam had patience. Chapter 7. Search and Destroy. Kill counts over strategy. U.S. commanders focused on body counts. The goal? Kill more enemy soldiers than they could replace. Villages were burned. Civilians were killed. Entire regions were labeled free fire zones. If someone moved, they could be shot. This strategy created more enemies than it killed. Chapter 8. Agent Orange and Chemical Warfare. America sprayed millions of gallons of Agent Orange to destroy jungle cover. The consequences were horrific: birth defects, cancer, environmental destruction. Vietnam still suffers today. So do American veterans. This was not warfare. It was ecological and human devastation. Chapter 9. The Soldier's Experience: Fear, Drugs, and Death. The average American soldier in Vietnam was 19 years old, often drafted, poor or working class. They fought a war they didn't understand, for a government that lied. Morale collapsed. Drug use exploded: marijuana, heroin. Some soldiers began fragging, killing their own officers. This was a military and psychological collapse. Chapter 10. The Tet Offensive, when America lost the war at home. In 1968, North Vietnam launched the Tet Offensive. Militarily, the U.S. and South Vietnam won. Politically, America lost everything. The enemy attacked cities, U.S. Embassy in Saigon. Americans watched the war on television. The government said victory was near. The images said otherwise. Trust was destroyed. Chapter 11. A Nation Divided. At home, America exploded. College protests, draft resistance, civil rights movements. Families turned against each other. Veterans were called murderers, baby killers. This war fractured American society like never before. Chapter 12. My Lai, when the mask fell. In 1968, U.S. soldiers massacred over 500 unarmed civilians in My Lai: women, children, elderly. The cover-up failed. America could no longer pretend it was the good guy. Chapter 13. Nixon, Cambodia, and More Lies. President Nixon promised peace with honor. Instead, he expanded bombing, invaded Cambodia, continued secret operations. The war dragged on. More died. Chapter 14. Broken Soldiers Come Home. There were no parades. Vietnam veterans returned to PTSD, addiction, homelessness, suicide. The government abandoned them. America moved on. They couldn't. Chapter 15. The Fall of Saigon. Final Humiliation. In 1975, North Vietnam captured Saigon. U.S. helicopters evacuated Americans from rooftops. South Vietnam collapsed. Everything America fought for was gone. Chapter 16. The Jungle That Ate Men Alive. Vietnam was not just a battlefield, it was a living nightmare. The jungle was thick, endless, and suffocating. Visibility was often less than 10 feet. Every step could mean death. American soldiers described the jungle as alive. Trees hid snipers. Grass concealed mines. Villages concealed enemies. You never knew who was watching. The Viet Cong didn't need to defeat the U.S. Army. They only needed to survive. And they did. Chapter 17. The Tunnels. A War Under the War. One of America's greatest failures was underestimating Viet Cong tunnel systems. These tunnels stretched for hundreds of miles, contained hospitals, kitchens, armories, had air vents disguised as termite mounds. American bombs destroyed villages above ground. Below ground, the enemy waited. Tunnel rats. To fight this underground war, the U.S. sent tunnel rats, small young soldiers armed with a pistol and flashlight. They crawled into darkness knowing snakes, traps, enemy soldiers, certain death. Many never came out. This wasn't warfare. It was terror survival. Chapter 18. Booby Traps.
Weapons of psychological war. The Viet Cong used simple materials, bamboo, rusted nails, tripwires, but their effect was devastating. Common traps included punji pits, spiked holes, grenades tied to doors, explosive pressure plates. These traps didn't always kill, they maimed. A wounded soldier required medics, evacuation, morale collapse. One trap could remove 5 soldiers from combat. Fear spread faster than bullets. Chapter 19. The Draft. Who really fought Vietnam? Vietnam was called a people's war, but not all people fought equally. The draft system favored the rich, the educated, the connected. College deferment saved millions. The front lines were filled with poor Americans, minorities, rural youth. African Americans died at disproportionately high rates early in the war. Vietnam exposed America's class divide like never before. Chapter 20. Racism within the ranks. The U.S. Army was officially integrated. Reality was different. Black soldiers faced harsher punishment, fewer promotions. As the civil rights movement grew at home, racial tension exploded in Vietnam. Some units were on the brink of internal war. America was fighting communism abroad while failing equality within its own army. Chapter 21. Body counts and blood statistics. U.S. commanders needed numbers. Victory was measured in enemy dead. This led to inflated kill counts, civilians labeled as enemies, villages counted as victories. Dead children became statistics. Truth became irrelevant. As long as numbers went up, Washington was satisfied. Chapter 22. Media, the first televised war. Vietnam was the first war broadcast directly into American living rooms. Every night, families saw burning villages, dead soldiers, crying civilians. This was not propaganda. This was reality. The government said, "We're winning." Television showed, "We're lying." For the first time, Americans didn't believe their leaders. Chapter 23. War photography that shocked the world. Some images changed history forever. A naked child fleeing napalm, a Viet Cong prisoner executed on camera, a monk burning himself alive. These images did what bombs couldn't. They destroyed moral justification. Chapter 24. The collapse of military discipline. As the war dragged on, discipline eroded. Soldiers questioned why they were there, who the enemy really was. Fragging incidents increased, where soldiers killed or threatened their own officers. This was unheard of in American military history. The Army was breaking from within. Chapter 25. Drugs. Escape from hell. Vietnam became synonymous with drugs. By the early 1970s, marijuana was common. Heroin was everywhere. Soldiers needed escape. Commanders often ignored it. A sober soldier questioned orders. A high soldier didn't. Chapter 26. Women and the Vietnam War. Vietnamese women suffered unimaginable horrors: rape, displacement, loss of children. American nurses also endured trauma, treating mutilated bodies, endless casualties, psychological scars ignored for decades. Their stories were erased. Chapter 27. The anti-war movement exploded. Back home, resistance grew. Draft card burnings, college sit-ins, mass protests. The Kent State shootings shocked the nation when U.S. troops killed American students. Vietnam had come home. Chapter 28. The Pentagon Papers. The truth exposed. In 1971, leaked documents revealed the truth. Presidents knew the war was unwinnable. They lied to the public. They escalated anyway. America was not misled. It was manipulated. Trust collapsed permanently. Chapter 30. The Soldiers Return. No Heroes Welcome. Vietnam veterans returned quietly. No bands, no parades. Many faced hostility, silence, shame. PTSD wasn't recognized. Help didn't exist. Some turned to drugs, some to violence, some to suicide. America forgot them. Chapter 30. The Cost. By the numbers. Over 58,000 American dead. Millions of Vietnamese killed. Entire ecosystems destroyed. Trillions spent. And for what? Vietnam became communist anyway. Chapter 31. The Psychological Defeat. America didn't just lose territory. It lost moral authority, trust in government, confidence in military power. This was called Vietnam Syndrome, the fear of foreign wars. Vietnam haunted every president afterward. Chapter 32. Was victory ever possible? Historians now agree, no. The war was misunderstood from the start. Vietnam wasn't about communism. It was about national identity. America fought ideology. Vietnam fought for home.
Chapter 33. Nixon's Promise. Peace with Honor. In 1968, America was exhausted. The streets were burning. Trust in government had collapsed. The war was going nowhere. Richard Nixon won the presidency with a promise: I will bring peace with honor. But Nixon had no intention of ending the war quickly. Instead, he planned to change how it was fought, not to win, but to delay defeat. Chapter 34. Vietnamization. Exit without defeat. Nixon introduced Vietnamization. The idea: gradually withdraw U.S. troops, transfer fighting to South Vietnamese forces. On paper, it sounded responsible. In reality, South Vietnamese troops were undertrained, corruption remained rampant, morale was low. Vietnamization wasn't a path to victory, it was a slow escape plan. Chapter 35. The Secret War. Cambodia and Laos. While promising peace, Nixon secretly expanded the war. American bombers rained destruction on Cambodia, Laos. These countries were officially neutral. The bombings were hidden from Congress, hidden from the public. Entire villages were erased. The result? Hundreds of thousands killed, radicalization of the region, the rise of the Khmer Rouge. Vietnam's poison spread outward. Chapter 36. Henry Kissinger. Diplomacy and Destruction. Henry Kissinger, Nixon's national security advisor, believed brutal force would force peace. His strategy: bomb harder, negotiate later. This approach prolonged the war, increased civilian deaths, destroyed America's global image. Peace talks were used as cover for escalation. Chapter 37. Christmas Bombings. Desperation from the Sky. In 1972, Nixon ordered massive bombings of North Vietnam. Known as the Christmas bombings, they were among the heaviest air attacks in history. The goal: intimidate, break will, force negotiations. Instead, they killed civilians, hardened resistance, changed nothing. Vietnam had already endured worse. Chapter 38. Paris Peace Accords. A face-saving exit. In 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed. America declared, peace has been achieved. U.S. troops withdrew, but the war never truly ended. The agreement allowed North Vietnamese forces to remain in the South. Everyone knew what would happen next. Chapter 40.
Abandoned allies. After U.S. withdrawal, military aid was cut, political support vanished. South Vietnam stood alone. Its fate was sealed. America had exited, but not responsibly. Chapter 40. The Final Offensive. In 1975, North Vietnam launched its final assault. South Vietnamese defenses collapsed rapidly. Cities fell one by one. The U.S. watched. It did nothing. Chapter 41. The Fall of Saigon, a symbol of defeat. April 30th, 1975. Saigon fell. U.S. helicopters lifted desperate evacuees from rooftops. Crowds stormed embassies. American allies were left behind. This wasn't just military defeat. It was global humiliation. The most powerful nation on earth had lost to a poor, war-torn country. Chapter 42. What happened to those left behind? After the fall, thousands were executed. Hundreds of thousands sent to re-education camps. Millions fled as boat people. Vietnam paid a horrific price. So did those who trusted America. Chapter 43. Veterans, the war that followed them home. For American soldiers, the war didn't end in 1975. It followed them into marriages, into jobs, into nightmares. PTSD became widespread, but unnamed. Many veterans were homeless, addicted, forgotten. They had fought for a lie and paid forever. Chapter 44. The Moral Aftermath. Vietnam changed how America saw itself. No longer the unquestioned good guy, no longer trusted by its own people. The myth of American innocence died in the jungle. Chapter 45. How Vietnam changed U.S. warfare. After Vietnam, politicians feared troop deployments. Media became tightly controlled. Wars became cleaner on TV. Vietnam taught leaders how not to lose public support, not how to avoid unnecessary wars. Chapter 46. The Shadow of Vietnam in Modern Wars. Vietnam haunted Iraq, Afghanistan. Once again, cultural misunderstanding, guerrilla warfare, endless occupation. History didn't repeat. It echoed. Chapter 47. Who really won the Vietnam War? Vietnam unified under communism, but at an enormous cost. America lost prestige. Trust was destroyed. There were no winners, only survivors. Chapter 48. The Lie That Never Died. Vietnam proved a dangerous truth. Governments will lie to protect power, sacrifice lives for politics, rewrite history. The lesson was learned, then forgotten. Chapter 49. The War That Ended America's Innocence. Before Vietnam, America believed in itself. After Vietnam, doubt replaced confidence. This war changed generations, not through victory, but through failure. Why Vietnam still matters. Vietnam wasn't just a war, it was a warning, a lesson written in blood, that military power cannot replace understanding. Fear creates monsters. Truth is the first casualty of war, and once lost, it's nearly impossible to recover. Vietnam was the war America couldn't win because it never understood what it was fighting.